Hello everyone, my name is Macarena Graña. I'm 24 years old and I'm at the Teaching Training College at Liceo Cultural Docente in Salta, Argentina. This presentation will be dealing the topic of sexting problems. But first, I would like to show you a short video about the topic as a way of introduction. I expect that you enjoy the video as much as I did. Okay, thank you.
Greetings, audience. My name is Thea. I'm a high school student, and today we're going to talk about sex. Operating on the assumption that you're human, you've almost certainly heard of sex. In case you haven't, to get you up to speed, sex is the process by which many organisms ensure their continued existence. Here's the thing though, sex is more complicated than that, because spoiler alert, humans are complicated. So how do we learn about sex if it's so complicated? You might remember sex education like this. Urban Dictionary, your source for news and information about the 21st century zeitgeist, describes sex education as, quote, where they try to scare you out of having sex with pictures of diseased genitals. A more hopeful description of sex education would be something like a lifelong process of learning about sex and sexuality, exploring values and beliefs, and gaining skills to navigate relationships and manage your sexual health. This, as far as I'm concerned, is a solid definition. So what can we do to make sex education something that teens find actually, educational? Clearly, teens need answers to their questions. So where do people go when they have questions? Listen, I love the internet. It's one of the greatest developments in the exchange of information in all of human history. But much of what it says about sexual health is not accurate by any stretch of the imagination, or is so laden with bias that it feels more like being pelted with judgment than actually receiving information. Unfortunately, not every teen is willing and able to chat it up with their parents about sex, so if not always the internet, where can teens turn? Enter the peer educator. People my age do indeed talk to each other about sex, so when teens are sources of accurate information, it spreads among us quickly. As a peer educator, I belong to a program that gives me the tools to learn about everything from STIs and safe sex to contraception and consent. Basically, I can tell you more about human sexuality than the average adult. When teens see someone like me instead of someone decades older, they are quite receptive to the information I have to offer them. At lunch once, some friends wanted to know the difference between hormonal and copper IUDs. So I brought this to the table. Another day, my teacher didn't understand how emergency contraception works, so I explained it to the class. So what does it look like when teens approach me with questions about sexual health? It goes something like this. Venereal disease? STD? STI? This terminology, it baffles me. STI stands for sexually transmitted infection. We used to say STD, which stood for sexually transmitted disease, but it was changed recently because STI is a more medically accurate term, and taking away the big scary word disease helps decrease stigma. What the heck is trichomoniasis? Well, trichomoniasis is an STI usually spread through vaginal intercourse. It is curable with just one dose of an oral drug. Common symptoms, regardless of a person's sex, are unusual discharge, painful urination, and itching, but it spreads really quickly because most of the time it's asymptomatic, which means people don't realize they have it. That's why it's so important to get tested regularly. Is it okay to be gay? Yes, all people of all identities and backgrounds, including on the LGBTQ+ spectrum, can lead healthy and productive lives. Regardless of your beliefs, everyone has the right to explore and express their sexuality without the fear of shame or judgment. Thanks. So often, when my peers approach me with questions like these, seeking this or that piece of information, at least a sliver of what they're wondering is, am I normal? So let's talk about normal. Part of the point of peer education is to give teens the opportunity to understand that there is no such thing as the elusive normal. Peer educators are here to say that armed with information that empowers you to make informed decisions, you are going to be okay. Normal isn't really necessary. When you can get accurate, judgment-free information from your peers, you realize that sex ed doesn't have to be scary. So instead of striving to be normal, let's talk to each other. Since peer education allows sex ed to reach the community in ways that go far beyond pictures of diseased genitals, it turns out to be pretty brilliant. An idea that, unlike trichomoniasis, is certainly worth spreading.
Okay, As we could observe in the video, the main mistake that society is making as regard sex, teenage sex, is misinformation or the lack of information. Okay, the view that teen sex is something that needs to be prevented is a common idea. But what if teen sex itself is not the problem? Okay, so what if teen sex itself is not the problem? As far as I'm concerned, the major problem is misinformation, or worst, lack of misinformation. These two factors can lead to several problems. Regardless of what one thinks about early sex initiation, the decision to engage in sexual activity or behaviors as a teen or young adult can have at least two important consequences. Okay, and here we can see that misinformation or lack of information can lead to misinformation or lack of information greatly increases the risk of teenage pregnancy, and it greatly increases the risk of getting a sexually transmitted infection. Okay, so to start with, I would like to mention the lack of information about sex issues. This is one of the most difficult topics that parents have to deal with when it comes to their own children. Having said this, the reality we must all face is that sexual intercourse, that is to say, the act of having sex, during high school is now a part of a normative experience of adolescence. So that is to say that it is part and parcel of that period in our lives that is called adolescence. Okay, isn't it a bit scary? Yes, no, but it is true. And that is precisely why we need to arm teens with knowledge and information. If parents want their children to know what their values are, they need to have a conversation with them as soon as possible in order to transmit their own values, or to let them know what are their own thoughts about this topic. And of course, to know our adolescents' thoughts about this topic that concerns them, especially them. Okay. Okay. Finally, although we all know it is a bad idea for teens to have sex, we should make protection and information available. We should shake awareness of contraception methods and safety in order to avoid our two biggest fears in life: teen pregnancy and STIs. Okay, so having introduced the two topics that concern this presentation, I would like to move on to contraception methods, which go hand in hand with teenage pregnancies. Okay, so here we can see some examples of contraception methods okay, and the most important thing here is that most teenage pregnancies are unplanned, and this unplanning paved the way for a wide range of difficulties along the life of this teenager. Okay, a big percentage of these unintended pregnancies will of course end in risky illegal abortion. As we know, in our country, abortion it is not legal yet. Okay, so that is why they are risky and also illegal, of course. Furthermore, adolescent girls who become mothers are more likely to drop out of school, and as a consequence have low educational attainment. Okay, they are also more likely to face unemployment, which will lead poverty, among other adversities. Okay, so going straight to the point, teenage pregnancy cannot occur in either of these two situations. Okay, teenagers do not have sex, which would be ideal, but they use effective contraception if they do have sex will help also. Okay, to achieve the first goal, once and again, parents play an important role. Okay, they together with sex education classes must emphasize the importance of waiting to have sex, but also the need for teenagers to use contraceptions such as birth control pills, condoms, whether masculine condoms or feminine condoms, and in this case, an intrauterine device which is called DIU. Okay, they need to know about these contraception methods, of course, if they are sexually active, and not of course, but compulsory if they are sexually active. Okay. And for those who are still reluctant to talk to adolescents about these topics, some studies indicate that these two contraception strategies do not lead to more teenage sex, and they also indicate that consistent contraceptive use greatly reduces the risk of teenage pregnancy. What does it mean? That if they use these contraception methods regularly, it is more likely to be successful in avoiding or preventing teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy. Okay. And as someone said once, okay, contraceptives no more cause sex than umbrellas cause rain. So when conception is unavailable, the likely consequence is not less sex but more pregnancy. Okay. Finally, I would like to add that most people are aware that teen pregnancy often leads to problems and challenges. Okay. However, most people are completely unaware of the devastating results of STIs, which is the next topic that concerns us. Okay, so in addition to pregnancy and birth, another problem with teenage sexual activity is the transmission of STIs. Okay, and you may be asking, or you may be wondering, what is an STI? Okay, it stands for sexually transmitted infections. Okay, and these infections can be passed on when you have unprotected sex or close sexual contact with someone who already has an STI. Okay, the most outstanding of this case, or the most remarkable in these cases, is that while an unplanned pregnancy becomes rapidly evident, of course, many of the consequences of having a disease like this type do not show up immediately. Okay. So now, what are the common STIs? Yes, the most common ones are herpes, chlamydia, which is a bacterial STI and that can infect the urethra and the cervix, those two organs. Okay. Then we have HPV, or human papillomavirus. This kind of virus, yes, can cause benign genital warts, and sometimes of HPV are responsible for cases of cervical cancer. Yes. Then we have syphilis. Last but not least, we have HIV, which stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and it is a virus that damages the immune system. Okay. So now, how can you prevent getting an STI? Yes. Unless most of them are treatable nowadays, as I recently said, the consequences of having a disease of this type do not show up immediately. Okay, so in this case we need protection or barrier devices. Yes, so the most common one, or the perfect match in this case, is are condoms. Okay, so when used correctly and consistently, that is to say regularly, each time that we are going to have sex, condoms offer one of the most effective methods of protection against STIs, including HIV. Okay, so considering the serious risk, it is crucial that teens begin to learn the comprehensive facts related to sexual behavior, and that they are encouraged to make health-oriented decisions. Okay, we need to make all this information available for them, and they need to feel confident to talk about their parents or to talk about an adult, because unless they do so, they will look for this information in another place, and we are not sure that the information in those places is the right one, and in this point is where things happen. Okay.
To sum up, adolescent sexual activity is increasing globally. Abstinence and ideally in the start of sexual intercourse may be the most effective methods in preventing the consequences of adolescent sexual activity. However, these goals are seldom met. It is unrealistic to expect a sexually active adolescent to stop their sexual activity. So that is why parents should take an active role in that they can be the providers of useful information to help the young to have a healthy sexual functional life. So I hope to have a great mark. No, in fact, I hope that this video help people and help adolescents most of all. I hope you have enjoyed this project as much as I did. It is my first time making videos, so it was a little bit difficult for me, but that is all. Thank you very much. See you next time.